All right, welcome to another episode. I just noticed on the last one, image there, I have a pretty big beard on that one. I think we got to mix that up.
Yeah,
um,
trimmed it down a bit.
yeah, it's no longer. I don't know whatever I was going for a look there. I think it was just probably cold winter. But anyways, welcome to another episode, a podcast. Your host Stephen Maxted, return guest, our first 2.0, William Aitken, director of Harvest Today Canada. William, welcome back. I'm excited
Thanks.
to chat more today. I've been seeing just so much stuff from your guys' end. It seemed very fitting to fit you back on the podcast here. You're representing Canada in a really cool way in terms of, producing local food for folks. I think more now than ever, this is really important to discuss and make people aware of, opportunities that are out there, number one, and two, how to support the existing companies that, are producing food for us locally. I've certainly not seen a lot of lettuce that is stamped with the, Canadian flag on it, because normally it's coming from California. And I think you guys are ultimately trying to change that.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me back on the show, Steve. And it's exactly the challenge that we're faced with right now with the whole buy local movement that has kind of been spurred. It's good to see, but where are you buying local lettuce in March in Manitoba, right? So it's a little hard to see that made in Manitoba stamp or the sticker, or to be able to scan the code and have, where is it sourced from, and have that lettuce reflect somewhere in Canada. So that's the mission of Harvest Today, of what we are trying to do here and what we are succeeding in doing, which is provide people with the opportunity to empower their local communities by growing sustainably, whatever type of a crop it is. Is it tomatoes? Is it strawberries? Is it leafy greens, lettuce, that sort of thing? And that's the mission of Harvest Today, is to make sure that people have local, fresh food 365 days a year.
And you bring up a really good point. I mean, we're really focused on it now, but I think one of the things that we've gotten used to over time, and when I think back to even my mom's made the comment before, she's like, years ago, we didn't have all this like fruits and veggies available year round. It used to be very seasonal. And then we got into, shipping internationally and all the like different trade things that have drastically improved, our standard of living in terms of healthy products available year round, whether it be berries, lettuce, like you just listed off tomatoes, like that was not always the case, but now we've become used to it. And now there's modern technology in the sense of vertical farming, which you guys are, ground floor on taking off here or internationally, I guess. We'll talk a little bit more about that, but I just see that it's a huge impact, huge opportunity. And for folks to really understand where their food comes from, because we have a lot more questions than ever about where things are produced. And, we think about it in terms of a lot of like clothing, I know gets brought up in the mix often, but, we're talking like food naturally sourced. You can't have a backyard garden where we are year round. You can have little things in your house, but how much is it really going to produce for you? And you work with a variety of growers today, and I've seen you sharing more of their stories and stuff. And maybe we should chat about what those folks are growing and how, like, volume wise, without putting on I'll grab a calculator if we need to chat about, how much they're producing and how easy this really is to actually have an impact on, supplying a local community. Maybe shout out to Kim initially here, but I know you're working with other growers, and I'm following their stories now too. And there's a few other vertical indoor farms popping up here locally in Manitoba. But what are you seeing out there for these farms that are existing, and what's the production look like?
Well, you see, with the fact that we're shipping all of this food up from California, the buy local and the movement for what we call the attainable agriculture movement here in Manitoba, where people buy one of our walls, grow locally, start to network within their community. Just as you mentioned, you're starting to follow all of these local startup farms in rural Manitoba. So what we're doing is we're starting up farms at the end of the road, because we know that we're better than truck bed lettuce. It's 2025. The supply chain, the logistics that you just mentioned, getting fresh berries coming up from California in February and March. Excuse me. Think of all the pesticides that are on that food to preserve that strawberry. So by the time it hits that shelf at your store, it still looks as fresh as the day it was picked 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, whenever that date was, right? So now you have this berry at your disposal, you take it, you wash it, you try to wash all the pesticides off of it, but are you really washing all the pesticides off of it? I'm not too sure. Right?
Yeah.
When we can take the technologies that we have today and adapt them into a sustainable solution for society to take advantage of, that's when we're actually going to be changing the trajectory of how people source local food, fresh food, right? Think of the
Yeah.
nutritional depletion that happens in that food after it gets picked, put on a truck, stored on that reefer for 3,500 miles while it gets shipped up to you.
Yeah, I was just looking at that here.
You
It's a
know
lot
what
of
I mean?
miles. Yeah.
Right? And now we're adding all of that carbon to the environment just to get a head of lettuce that by the time it gets you, it has no nutritional value to it whatsoever. We just say that we're just basically shipping lettuce flavored water across the continent. But technology has caught up to the point where it's sustainable. The solutions are there. We can provide them to communities, and we're doing it here in Manitoba on such a large scale. It's going to just, as I said, change the trajectory of society in such a meaningful way. It's going to be absolutely amazing.
Yeah, that's, I mean, talking before here, not going to hide the fact I'm a big fan of what you guys are doing. I think it's awesome. And it's so cool that we have a local connection here in Winnipeg doing this for Canada as a whole. I mean, you cover the whole area, and I'm sure other areas are picking this up and seeing this as an opportunity to grow locally. And you're totally right. I mean, some of the, I guess we call it vertical indoor farms that I've been through, and it's so much more, you smell it, I guess is where I'm going with this. You can literally smell the flavor coming off of the stuff. It's not a lot different than, years ago, family, my grandmother, very humble roots, had a homestead years ago, always had a garden at the lake, which has now become, cabins and stuff. But was a homestead years ago. And you pull a carrot out of the garden there, it tastes a lot different than any carrot I've had from a store. Sorry, carrot companies. But that's just the reality. Or lettuce, right? It's no knock. It's just the reality of that transfer. It's great that we have access to them, and there is some value there, obviously, in the nutrition, but getting it right near you local is a huge impact. And I think people recognize that too. It's the reason people go to farmers markets in the summer. Yeah, they want to support local, but they also know that there's a huge difference in flavor profile from the products that they're getting there versus anywhere else that is like mass shipped up here. Like I said, it's great that we have it, but I think it's time to bring that a little bit closer to home base on that front there. So,
yeah, and the beauty of what we do, Steve, is at Harvest Today, we manufacture the harvest wall, right? So our piece of growing equipment is what we want to position up into the conversation of NFT, deep water culture, drip irrigation, right? So we're getting our product into that kind of a conversation mix. So the way that the product works is it's a scalable solution, so it can fit many molds. So it can go into the residence, it can go into a school. We can put it into, we have walls in prisons here in Manitoba, and then we can do commercial application as well. So it provides a wide array of solutions and adaptability for the end user.
William,
so
I'm going to do something.
Like, as you mentioned, the freshness. I have a 108 port wall here in my house. You can see the purple light behind me. It's right to my right. With that 108 ports, my family, we eat off of the wall every single day. Awesome. Last night we were at Olive Garden for my son's birthday. Yeah. And my children refused to eat the salad.
Because it's just a different level of
flavor. They just know it's crap. Pardon my French.
No, it's okay.
My 17-year-old looked at the big bowl of salad that you get at Olive Garden, and she pushed it off to the side, and she goes, "I won't eat that." She goes, "I know there's no flavor or nutrition in it." So, wild. And this is my 17-year-old making this decision at the restaurant because she knows, because she comes downstairs before supper and she harvests a meal.
Wow. And that's the exact same thing. If we go back, like just a different version of it, I just pulled up. Can you see this okay on your end? I hope that you can. Okay. Sorry. I just pulled this up for visual. If someone's watching here, they can see what these look like. This is the website, Harvest Today, or harvest.today is where you can go and check this out. But I think it's important just to comment while we're describing it here. We can't quite see it clearly on your end, and that's okay. We'll use this here. But it's like back in the day, you used to have, this garden in the backyard, you just go pick from it. But we live in a different time now, and it'd be great if you can have it in a setting like you do, where it's growing constantly. You can go down and pick it, use it regularly. But we do live pretty fast-paced lives, and it's still the convenience to go into the store to get this stuff. But if there is farms producing this, locally, and being able to add, the better product in there, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
It was your daughter or your son that was saying that, or both maybe.
Yeah.
They're like,
Well,
hey,
yeah,
no to salad.
all three of them.
Awesome.
And they
Yeah.
they range from 12 to 17, right? So it's kind of like the morphing from my one buddy said, you got the piano, the grand piano. Well, how were you able to market this grand piano and get people en masse to use it? Well, you built the piano room in the house, right? And then you have cellar rooms for wine, and then you have fitness rooms. Well, now you're going to morph the house, and you're going to have a grow room, so then people can start growing their own vegetables and living a little bit more sustainably when it comes to how they eat.
I mean, yeah, look at it. I'm just scrolling here for listener if they're watching here and how to get in touch. Fantastic. Yeah. It definitely makes sense, right? I think we're at this stage, and it's a weird cycle thing, right? Like years ago, like I mentioned, I don't know, coming from humble beginnings, landing in Canada here, it's like we had a homestead where there's like a cow. I wasn't, sight unseen for this, but what I'm told, a cow, a pig, whatever it was, and then a garden with a bunch of potatoes in it probably, and some lettuces and stuff, whatever you could grow. But now we can put that in a wall and light, and you guys are responsible for having this wall assembly there, and then you have a choice of lighting in there. And now these walls, do they water themselves, or do you have to
so it's all in one. So as you can see on that picture, Steve, in the bottom is where your water is held in the reservoir.
Okay.
So that's 28 gallons. There are connections on the side, so then you can hook it up into an external. So if you want a 50-gallon or 100-gallon tank with nutrient dosing equipment and all that, you can set that up. Otherwise, you can keep it as a standalone all-in-one. Water simply gets pumped up to the top into a flood rail, so we don't have any drip emitters or anything that could get overly clogged. The water then just simply cascades down the back. It hits all of the ports, providing all the nutrients and water saturation to the plant that it needs, and the mediums soaking it, and then just simply once it's soaked, it cascades off to the next to soak the next cup on its way down for recirculation through the tank. And because we are using organic growing medium, you're pumping that wall maybe 3 or 4 times a day for 3 or 4 minutes. So it's not a constant irrigation cycle because of the use of the organic growing medium, being saturated. You give it drying out periods that plants naturally get in nature.
That is fantastic. And you guys are growing such a variety of stuff. And on your own wall personally, what are you guys growing there?
Yeah, at my house here, I got some romaine. I got a little bit of leaf lettuce. I have some tomatoes. I have some ghost peppers. I have kale. I have chard. I have arugula. I have some oregano, and that's it. That's what I got.
Well, nothing like a casual laundry list of the whole farm right there.
Mm-hmm. Well, it gives you that good mix. When the kids come down, they can go and grab some shards. So they grab the red, the green, the yellow shards. They pull out some of the leaf lettuces. They'll throw out some kale. They grab a little bit of the arugula, and it's super sharp and spicy, right? Like it's got a nice peppery hit to it when you eat it because it's so fresh, right? And then the tomatoes haven't kicked in yet, and the peppers have taken a little bit longer than I thought they would. I think maybe I bought the wrong varietal, but and these are all seeds that I picked up at Walmart.
Shout out to Walmart seed department.
Well, hey man, I just excuse me. I just figured, if somebody's going to be growing at home, where are they going to go? They might go to the dollar store. They might go to, if you're in an urban setting, you don't have access to a greenhouse, and some people might not think, to go to Johnny Seeds or go to some source like that to get some hydroponic seeds. So they'll go to Walmart when they're there grabbing whatever, right?
That's great. You're experimenting like the average person would go get them.
User, right? So
very cool. Now offset here, so there's kind of like we have the residential folks that are going to use this, and then there's folks turning facilities into like indoor farms. you want to chat a little bit about like what that production can look like if you're mass producing, I guess, trying to get it
Yes.
out to the
So
folks?
what we've noticed is there's a lot of like the buy local movement has spurred a
Yeah.
lot of people to want to be living sustainably, to be sourcing locally, and as we mentioned right at the beginning of the conversation, where do you buy a head of lettuce that has the Made in Canada stamp in February?
Mm-hmm.
It's literally
Yeah.
non-existent, right? You know,
Yes.
so when people want to end that truck bed lettuce, the whole motion and the movement is to start with one wall, or you start with
Right.
maybe two of our commercial walls. For example, Kim Moffat, a lady over in Minnedosa, she owns a company called the Greenhouse Next Door. She started off with a 720. She took the 720, put it in her living room, took her everything and moved it into the basement. And then a month and a half later, she bought another 720 port wall. And then a couple months later, she's purchased another wall. And now she's purchased the house next to her. She's renovated it with her husband, and she just placed an order the other day for two more 720 port walls. So
Wow.
she's gonna have 3,500 ports in this house, growing for the town of Minnedosa. And once
Very cool.
she's made some revenue off of that, she's going to start expanding and adding more atmospherics into the house, and creating a full sustainable controlled environment agriculture facility for the town of Minnedosa, and provide
Unreal.
local produce 365 days a year.
That is awesome.
It's absolutely amazing. I mean, she started she started 2 years ago when she first purchased a wall. So it's taken her until now to grow her business, to get it to the point where she's rapidly expanding. But it's attainable agriculture. So when you're buying a wall off of Harvest today, 720 ports, the wall costs, our package price is $19,500 on it. The wall itself, it produces $2,000 a month in revenue, in reoccurring revenue, every month. Your monthly expenses are about $300 on the wall, and that's all in with electricity, with labor, with nutrient. So it's a reasonable cost. So that's why it's attainable, because something on that, your ROI is 12 months.
Yeah, I was just doing a quick calc if you heard me typoing keys here.
12.3 months, right?
Yeah.
So if your ROI is 12.3 months on that, we warranty it for 10, people aren't going to stop eating, Steve, right? And so you're just going to magnify your business, but because you're in your community, for example, I hate to pick on Kim, but she's in a community of 2,500 people.
Yeah.
Right? Where else can people go to get local fresh produce? You go see the greenhouse next door.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow, and that name is just so fitting. That just slid perfectly into dialogue there. Obviously, a very good choice by Kim there. Another shout out to Kim. But no, you're totally right, and I mean that's a great example of where this is a fit, and it's really just a starting point though, because there's many other cities, towns, and then much larger city centers that could be using walls or starting farms. I think it's probably deep rooted because, or I do know this about Kim too, connected to a rural community that's very farm focused as well. So for them, have an understanding of where food comes from and such like that is more maybe top of mind than some urban settings. Not always, but then you have folks that can provide a better product in bigger cities, and you can see this just absolutely taking off for you guys.
Yeah, and we are picking up in larger urban centers as well. For example, we've got a farm set up in downtown Vancouver. It's called Vertigrow, and they have 10 walls. They're growing sustainably downtown Vancouver, and they're again seeing a quite the quite the positive feedback in relation to what they're doing, what they're trying to do, and set up just a small local farm in Vancouver that services so many community blocks, and then you drive 15 minutes and set up another farm. and then you drive 15 minutes to set it right. So it's
Yeah.
small, localized, capitalizing on the market kind of farms.
I think this is exactly where we kind of need to be going on terms of like the local side of things. Little moves like this and using modern technology solutions to accomplish them. Ultimately, this wasn't available 30 years ago. I don't think anyone was thinking this. Maybe the odd duck out there was doing something indoors, but this really wasn't the case.
No, and it's because, again, back then it was, you're dealing with these big 2,000 watt metal hal lights that are just, consuming all this energy, and you got these big HVAC blowers that are coming in and just kicking in. And now we got these little strips of LED lights. When we're working it out on a commercial base, I don't know what energy rates are, so can't really give that initial forecast with people, but we can definitely break down the calculation on how much energy a wall is going to consume throughout the entire month, right? So if you have 20 lights, each light is consuming 62 watts. You're breaking out at 1980 watts per hour, and then throughout the day, you divide that by 1,000. You're only using 19 kilowatts of energy throughout the day. You multiply that by 9, here in Manitoba, 9.4 for kilowatt hours. And then once you break it all down on the math, it works out to 7 cents worth of energy per port per month.
Wow.
So if you're growing a head of lettuce on that port and you're selling it for $2.50 to $3, your energy cost isn't nearly as much as what everybody assumes that it's going to be when you're thinking about your lighting.
That's really cool math. I'm glad you just went through that. I'm going to trust you on that. I'm not using a calculator to dumb that down.
I'm going to pull up my cheat sheet just so then I can.
No. I mean, it's got to be close. You work on this all day here. There's a high level trust on the calculation there. It's very neat to hear that said, because it sounds like it's not so much about the cost on that side. It seems like it's just going to be a change in how and where we get used to buying our, lettuce from in the future as vertical farming becomes more popular.
It's the teaching to people of how bad the food is that you actually buy at the grocery store. Like it's horrible. Yeah. When you look at it, it's dead, it's depleted. Superstore, it looks like a morgue, right? Like it just looks like decaying fiber. That's all it is, right? So when we can start to, and it's going to start with our government to get these programs initiated into schools, into hospitals. I feel that there's a huge application into the prison system to work walls with reducing recidivism rates within the prison system. We just got a scathing review about the lack of access to resources and adaptable societal skills for inmates when they come out, right? So if we can employ and get some sort of sustainable vertical agriculture programs initiated within our prison system here throughout Manitoba, we can actually reduce recidivism rates by up to 85%, sometimes as high as 95%, if the inmate has some sort of a dependency associated with, why they're in there. So if they have an addiction or if they have some sort of a chemical imbalance, because what happens is that it flips the script in there, and it provides an unobtrusive way how to kind of get them to think about care and compassion, because that plant is now dependent on them, right? So there's a lot of mental health and connections and different ways that the greenery and they have to make sure that this plant is alive. And then after they're done, the plant is actually going to give them some sort of nutrition, so a benefit to their body, right? Excuse me. So now you can teach people how to care about what they put in their body, right?
Yep.
So when you take that aspect and then you morph it over into the school system, right? We teach children how to, care about where food comes from, how they can cultivate it, how they can source it locally. How does that morph into society 20, 30 years from now, right? How can we attack obesity rates? How can we attack diabetes. I don't know if you know this, but in the year 2043, if we implement healthy eating initiatives here in schools here in 2025, by the year 2043, we could reduce obesity rates at the hospital by up to 70%.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, this is just from a small sample of me. But and I train a lot and I try to eat healthy, but if there's easier access to stuff even in my own house, but if we magnify that to be in like stores and such, which corner stores, other things like that, and if this is more available within schools, you're gonna see an impact there. I could totally agree with you on that.
Yeah,
because like
we have to teach the children to care about what they put in their body. Right.
Yeah.
And my thing is, I always say to people, have you ever seen a Nutri-Grain wrapper floating in the wind?
Yes.
but you know what I mean? Like a Nutri-Grain wrapper compared to like a bag of chips or a can of pop or what the case is. You very rarely will see a Nutri-Grain wrapper floating in the wind, because if somebody is eating a Nutri-Grain bar, they probably care about what they put in their body. So they're going to care about what happens to that wrapper. So they're going to throw it in the garbage. Right. So if we can teach kids how to care about what they put in their body from a very young age, what's that going to look like to addictions and homelessness in 20, 30 years from now? So what does that look like, again, to your health system? What will that look like to your justice system? How much of that stress and those expenditures will it alleviate off of those expenses that the government is trying to figure out, how can we corral this and contain it? Well, the way that you contain it is you give people healthy food to eat.
Yeah. There's
entire aisles that are associated with garbage food at grocery stores.
Yeah.
Right.
But
we
have
one health food aisle.
Yeah. Which is funny because we call, like junk food one thing we don't really have, and then they say go on like a diet to be healthy. I've seen these like clips online that talk about it. It's kind of ironic in a way. I definitely feel you all the way through there, William, with what you're chatting about, because the connection to food is really important. All the way through. I think the closer we were to connected with, 19 years ago, and more gathering aspects like that, you go to like first settlers here, kind of like terms of homesteads, you're right on there. And I think we've lost a little bit of that connection. Ultimately, what I'm hearing you say is being more connected to your food, where it's coming from, understanding that. And we've kind of gone like on a bit of a cycle in my mind, because I remember years ago, where was this? This was not that long ago, actually. I think when I was living in Brandon. It was probably like a decade ago. Maybe now it's time flies, but they had an outdoor garden thing outside of one of the prisons there that I used to drive by when I was working in ag and lived on a farm out there. And then I think they got rid of it. Something happened, whatever. Not good. But nonetheless, that used to be a thing that was very common on correction facilities, I guess we'll say. And now that totally makes sense to me. Get the people eating healthy, and you just feel better. I mean, overall, whenever slip up, have some candy, do the, eat the shitty pizza, whatever it is, it's whatever. But if that becomes like your pattern, you are so much related, like, the mind body side of things and your gut health, drastically improves, and you make
it's huge, man. And it doesn't take much, not to get on to too personal, but I got possession of my kids at the beginning of the year, and it's April 2nd, and they're pushing salad away at the restaurant, saying it's crap.
Right.
So it doesn't take very long to implement the change. You just got to implement the change.
This is not going to be a perfect comparison, but I know. I was just thinking of buying nicer wines. At one stage, I wouldn't go get the cheapest one anymore. I'm like, hey, and then you can't go back. That's the dangerous part about that. I know. Sorry, I'm derailing the whole kids and lettuce thing.
It's all good. I know. I get it.
Adult lettuce, whatever you're cooking with it. But once you try something that's a little bit nicer and more flavorful, it's just a better product ultimately. Mm-hmm. And you know that you're not going to go back and have something lesser, whatever that may be. And then we don't really have, stats all the way through and following specific product consumption all the way through, but there's some direct ties. You don't, less ingredients the better. And if you guys are promoting products that can be one ingredient products grown closer to home, don't have to be shipped as far, you know where it's coming from. Because we kind of blindly just trust packages. We walk into a store, we look at it, they've done really good marketing, whatever it is, and it's like, oh, awesome, I'm going to buy whatever, even if it is a healthy thing, but you have no idea what the back end of that farm actually looks like, and it might not look so great. Shout out to the ones that are doing good work, but we really don't know. In this case, it's coming from a wall here, and where you're getting lettuce, strawberries, tomatoes, other peppers, within that sense. So that's really cool.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because my wife and I, we were walking through, I think it was Dollarama a couple of weeks back, and she picked up a candy, and she said, "Oh, this is banned in China because it gives you hallucinations." We looked at it and we're like, she's like, "Yeah, this is," but it's there on the shelf, right? So you don't know exactly what, even though you're here in Canada, is it safe to consume? Are you sure all the pesticides are off of it? Do you know what it was grown in? What was leached into the soil, right? So now you got all these types of E. coli that can pop up in the soil, and then it gets sucked up through the root zone, and now it's right in your lettuce. So you just don't know what the rules and the regulations are, because there's mass overpopulation happening in California. You're getting a hog plant, that's a mile away from the romaine field, and you don't know what the leaches coming off the hog plant are, that's leaching into the ground and into the waterways that the plants are sucking up, right? So we need to go more.
I totally follow that path. I mean, coming from the ag background, more commercial ag, exactly like that. Been on lots of farms, and they're often neighbored up with other farms, and you're not always 100% on that, but lots of great producers out there too on that end of things. Do you think, William, it looks as if, and I was just at a meeting yesterday talking about this, a bit of an exit from some of the downtown buildings in general. Every city has kind of had this since COVID, or the big flu, and then there's like people coming back to offices, or maybe not, but like it's the combo I had yesterday has really indicated that there's a lot of space available in downtown and urban settings. Do you see Harvest Today fitting in terms of like a really urban setting, and being able to turn traditional office spaces into vertical farms?
Greatly. We did have a project on the shelf. It got doged, I guess you could say, in the States, and it was actually to convert, I believe it was 4 23-story high-rise office buildings in Houston. So so we do see that, and the Harvest Wall, because of what we've come up with and what we've designed, is the maximum height on it, Steve, is 7'4".
Okay.
So when we go into an office space, 9-foot, 10-foot ceilings, you have that the air movement. You can set up your ducts. You can get venting. You can apply it, and then maximize that cubic volume for maximum grow efficiency within that area. We work with another group called Rooted Robotics, and they're based out of Boulder Valley in Colorado. And we're working with them to create a series of automations, so that when you get into farms of that magnitude, you are going to need some sort of automation towards it. We firmly believe at Harvest Today that humans need plants and plants need humans. So there is always going to be a level of farming to vertical farming. We don't want to take a seed, put it on a conveyor belt. 6 weeks later, you got a full head of lettuce. That's not our style. Okay. Yeah. We want you to interact with the plants. We want the plants to interact with you and become a part of that lifestyle. So with the design of the wall, we've morphed it from a door kind of application to a panel. So the panel then it maximizes it at 90 plants on the panel. When the walls are fully grown and saturated, typically comes in at about 48 pounds. So it's underneath that 50-pound single-person occupancy lift. So you can pop the panel out of the wall, take it over to a harvesting station. We are still kind of in the middle of creating it with Rooted Robotics, but essentially the goal is you're going to take this fully loaded wall, put it on one side of the conveyor. It'll slide through, harvest it, pick it, clean it out, wash it, disinfect it, repopulate it, and then by the time it comes out, you can grab it again and then just put it back in the wall.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I think that is really important though too, that you're right, that individuals are still connected with this farming process. Probably what makes, this truly urban farming in that setting there, where you have to have that connection. I always joke that we're fancy plants anyways.
Yeah, we are.
The seasonal depression that we go through in springtime here, all of a sudden there's a burst of energy in Canada with everyone, getting ready for summer. And obviously we go through that experience here, but it's interesting to hear that, down in Texas there, because I think of that as a hot environment where farming is closer to year round, and that might not be as utilized, but I can see a couple, areas where there's different weather conditions that do limit it to not be perfectly year round, right? There's lots of kind of almost in like hurricane area, or can be, which can certainly affect farming and or tornadoes. I believe Texas has tornadoes.
Definitely. And it gets too hot.
Oh, also that, So lettuce the opposite of what we have here, hey? Yeah.
Lettuce doesn't like it, and when we're setting up we have a pretty cool project going on in Dubai right now. And what we're doing is we're setting up rooftop orchid greenhouse gardens all throughout kind of the downtown Dubai, like along the strip there. And their issue that they have is you need to cool the water, because the water comes out too hot. So how are we going to cool the water when it comes out? Because it, typically it goes through a series of filters and everything. So if we're going to be pumping the water in off the street, how are we going to serve it up to the plants? There they don't really have too many. You don't drink the water coming out of the tap, right? It's all bottled water, that sort of thing. You're not drinking out of the tap. I didn't make the mistake, but I ordered water at a restaurant, and they asked me what kind of water, and I said, well, just get it from the tap. And they're like, no, sir, we don't do that.
We will not allow you to do that. Yeah.
You will not be one happy camper afterwards, right? So
that's interesting.
So when you get into different climates, into different zones, the reason being is because you just can't grow certain plants in those areas. Right. Over in the Philippines, for example, you can't grow strawberries. So they have a huge demand for strawberries over there.
Interesting.
Same thing in Africa. Huge demand for strawberries in Africa.
Well, I do follow some other accounts that have strawberries. I didn't even think about that in terms of, the outdoor climate maybe affecting ultimately the ability to grow certain crops. And then cooling versus heating. We're always thinking here, we got to heat this stuff up and break it that way. But other parts of the world would be the opposite. You're totally right. Even down, different parts of Florida in the summer, it's too hot to kind of handle in many ways, right? You're scorching. Your feet are almost like toasty walking in shoes, in parking lots. It's interesting. Always things. It's never a perfect situation, but you're able to control that by growing indoors. Ultimately.
As soon as you grow indoors and you get some sort of automation over your environmentals, that's when you can grow pretty much anything, anywhere, right? I mean, for example, there's a fellow in Saskatchewan. I'm not too sure where he's at. I've seen him on social media here and there. But he's got a banana tree in his house.
What?
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen that guy.
I have not. You're gonna have to send that after.
Yeah, he's got a banana tree. He's like plucking bananas in February and sitting in Saskatchewan.
That is too funny. Well, I can definitely see Barry, and we do have like a larger scale farm right now in Manitoba that is doing tomatoes up near Dauphin area. And so these things are happening, slowly and steady, and trying to grow and expand that. And then you guys are a big part of this. And it sounds like there's even some new tech that you mentioned on here about that is coming to market for you guys. But I think really early adapters getting in on this are going to be on the forefront and pioneers in helping feed local communities. I don't think this is going to go away. That's why I feel so passionate about it. I think that this is going to be the way of, moving forward, year round supply and steady. You have way more control over it.
Yeah. And
ultimately,
the movement, I feel, things weren't really supposed to start taking off until 2030. But I think with the whole buy local, the Trump situation kind of pulling and rattling the chains, he's moved this and projected it a lot quicker for us here in Canada You know, because he's just kind of woken us up. Really, at the end of the day, you know,
Totally.
you love to hate the guy. You know, you don't know which way he's going to go, which is kind of fun to try to navigate. But you know, I don't try to navigate. I just sit back and enjoy the ride. But what it's done is it's made Canadians wake up. And again, back to the start of the conversation, Steve, where we were talking about where do you buy that made in Canada lettuce in February.
Yeah.
You just can't find that sticker that says made in Canada on your basil, or unless you go to Cal's Crops, right? Which is one of our local farmers downtown Winnipeg. They're at the corner of Main and McDermott, just right above Parlor Coffee. So they've got 4 of our walls, and they do it.
Cool.
But aside from that, you know, like where else can you really go here in Winnipeg to get your buy local lettuce in February?
Well, I guess Cal's is the answer so far, but hopefully we get other farms on board and participating in that. Because I mean, there's lots of stores I think that would very happily beat their chest and be on board for supporting a local indoor farm like this. So hopefully this gets chatting about it.
I won't spoil too many of Cal's Crop secrets, but they have a couple farms that they're planning on the horizon. Maybe you can pull them in on a conversation, Steve.
Oh yeah,
and
for sure.
They can let their cat out of the bag, but I think people are going to be extremely excited to see what Cal's Crops and harvest today, and then Trina Semenchuk, the little greenhouse that could. All 3 of us are going to be partnering up on a couple projects that are going to hit the ground within the next couple months, and I think Winnipeggers are going to be really proud in what we've accomplished for them.
Very cool to hear. Actually, I think we have. I don't want to spoil this, but I think a couple of names you just mentioned might be already lining up to be on. So hopefully we have them on here to share. We'll get every angle of the story here. You know, reporting live.
Awesome.
Right from the farm. Or maybe as it's happening and stuff, we're going to start to be more in person. But I think William, you've given great insight and a great update on Harvest Today, Walls, the benefits of vertical farming, and truly supporting local all the way through, in terms of it being from a very different method. I guess it's going to become more common for us. You know, other parts of the world use this as their main source of almost like farming, as we have seen online. And hopefully we can play catch up on that and have fresh, awesome, nutritious food year round. So and we'll attach links as normal below in terms of where to find you. But ultimately, we did have the website on earlier on the episode here. So if you want to check stuff out, contact you guys through there. It seems to be a very efficient way. But you guys have an array of socials on all the platforms. And yeah, we wish you guys nothing but the best. I'm excited to continue to follow the journey.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. It's been a pleasure being on the podcast again. And I look forward to being the first 3.0.
We're the first 2.0, so we are too.
Yeah. Cool, man.
Awesome. Great. Thanks, William.
Yeah. Thanks, Steve. Talk to you.